does this too, to a respect. Just as far as like, we're going to go on this trip and things that like they wouldn't be doing if not for the show. You know, a lot of like this crazy thing is happening that wouldn't be happening if they weren't making a TV show.
All right. Let's talk. We're going to touch on TLC as it relates to other things we're talking about. I don't think we're going to do a full recap because we're 3 TV shows now removed from TLC, if you count NXT as well, which I watched this morning. I don't know if you caught it, Eric. The cage match. I
watched it this morning, too.
Cage match, which we can talk about quickly. Cage match between Aleister Black and Johnny Gargano. Excellent match. More interesting, though, for the ending.
Very interesting for the ending, yes.
So it was. I think it's a really well done story. I don't know that we'll ever actually see DIY as a completely now heel version of its old self.
Yeah.
Like a complete mirrorverse version of it. But the fact that it's steering us toward that. Like Gargano at some point maybe will have an awakening and turn babyface again. But it's been a really effective journey. I was on the fence personally about him. The shades of gray they were playing with too much, and then him going full heel. But now I've turned around on that a bit, and it's really interesting, especially because they don't rush it. And yeah, like I feel like if this story was on Raw, the match from this week would have ended with him and Ciampa hugging and raising each other arms, music. And they're like a full team, instead of Gargano still being really torn about it.
Yes. It has been a very good slow burn storyline that, they're able to kind of do in a very specific way that doesn't feel drawn out. Just has like a lot of interesting sort of back and forth. And I think they've invested too much in Ciampa and Gargano as singles guys at this point to just have DIY back. But not to say they can't do sort of a mini run with it or something, but we'll see. It's very interesting, everything they're doing, because now you wonder like what's exactly going to happen at TakeOver. Like how is this exactly going to pan out at TakeOver?
They can't be a full heel tag team because Undisputed Era still exists, but I do feel like if Gargano's we'll just say minion at this point, helping Ciampa keep that title maybe at TakeOver, and then still further setting up for, they align themselves for a little while until Ciampa becomes even more of a monster and, Ted DiBiase's Gargano's Virgil. You know what I mean? Like, talks down to him or berates him in some way that makes Johnny do a babyface turn again. Then you've got the rematch with Ciampa as champ. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can go with it. But right now, it was quite thrilling. It was pretty cool. I didn't...
Yeah,
go ahead.
Say it.
No, that's it. I am done.
I agree, is all I was going to say. No, it was really well done. And they keep... I don't know. Yeah, I keep being impressed by the different directions they go, the different ways they go. Aleister Black sort of, still being a part of this, and but keeping them all in their own sort of zones. And like you said, I admire their restraint, and it's a fine line because you could feel like, oh, they're still doing this, but that's not what you feel. You feel like, oh no, this is like the next iteration of this, or this keeps evolving, and that's the most important thing. It doesn't feel stagnant, but it also doesn't feel like they're just going on forever with it.
What did you think of Marina Shafir and Jessamine Duke? Did you watch that match?
I did. It was fine. It was nothing, I was mostly excited to see Io. I don't know if that was her first match since Mae Young Classic, but one of her first.
Like TV match? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fun because, well, first of all, Io Shirai and Dakota Kai's music are almost exactly the same. So having them come out, they should just come out together at this point. Felt redundant. But yeah, I think if they're ever considering a horsewoman versus horsewomen match, whether for Sooner or for After Mania, they need to get Duke and Shafir in that ring as much as possible, like to get them up to speed with everyone else. Let's talk shakeups. Let's talk about what we brought up last week, which was WWE actively acknowledging their letting down the fans with certain storylines in a very strange way by having Seth Rollins call these things out against Baron Corbin, who was the in-storyline punching bag for what was not his fault.
Yeah, yeah.
In a way that was very that didn't fit who Seth Rollins was himself, because he was calling out very specific things that fans cared about, but he shouldn't care about, like Lucha House Party.
Yeah.
So the reaction this week was for Vince McMahon. He said, the news came in over the weekend before TLC even, that Vince was going to show up on Raw and shake things up. To which I immediately thought, oh, it's going to be a roster flip. It's going to be a superstar shakeup. Like, the shake things up is just a way of hinting that he's going to do a superstar shakeup, which I'm not against.
Yeah.
But, okay, so I think you and I both had a lot of thoughts in our head this week, so trying to, like, form them into something coherent, I'm going to start with the bigger picture. The bigger picture, I think, and steer me in the right direction if I go off the rails. But the bigger picture is change was coming anyway. Because we both talked about how the road to WrestleMania is coming up in the Royal Rumble, and that's when the deck gets reshuffled anyway.
Yes.
And we were talking about how we just had a few more weeks of shit to sort of sit through before things possibly could get exciting again.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're still in that phase. We're still there. Like, this was all coming anyway. This was going to happen, and when the McMahons all came out on TV, they said change is coming. It wasn't going to happen that night. It was coming because it was always coming.
Mm-hmm.
This is just kind of what they were doing. So I think there were some things that they did at the last second, like these NXT call-ups. But the rest of it, I think, was stuff that they probably already had in their back pocket anyway, because December is sort of a turd month for wrestling, and it always has been in WWE. What do you think of that?
I think it's a little bit of a mix, because, okay, so, again, I see on Twitter everyone is bemoaning the fact that, they're announcing some big change up, and then it's just like, oh, the McMahons are back in charge, which, again, and we're just talking storyline, it gets very convoluted, because that's why I know it, even though it shouldn't make us be like, come on, it does feel a little unfair in that storyline-wise, Baron Corbin's being chastised for running Raw into the ground, and Vince is here to take back control, but of course in real life Vince has been in control the whole time. So it's just a weird thing where he can protect himself, like, by coming out and being like, I'm here to fix things. I'm here to fix
what I broke.
right.
And Baron Corbin's standing across from all of them, dying for our sins.
Right.
He's paying the price in the ring for the things everyone on the other side of the rings did.
Yeah.
Like especially Steph. Like Steph is now denouncing Baron Corbin. Like, if we're talking storyline, she's keeping it in storyline, and they're blaming him for doing things. She's the one who put him in charge, and she's the one who allowed him to keep doing things. She was his biggest advocate.
Yes. That's a huge, like, kind of just plot issue that they're not addressing, is the fact that she was also running Raw, in fact, and she had more power than Baron Corbin in the storyline, and yet no one is, she's not being called out for that. It also kind of sucks because SmackDown has been pretty damn good, yet somehow it gets kind of like washed up in this as well.
Yeah, that was my fear Monday night, is that, does this mean Daniel Bryan's... Does that mean everything that is also maybe good right now gets swept under the rug and washed out with the tide too, because they're scrapping everything and everything's tainted? Like, does Daniel Bryan lose the belt quick?
Yeah, but I will say, so all that being said, because again, I see on Twitter everyone being like, oh, it's just Vince and the McMahons and Triple H taking control again, and that and how unexciting that is, which I completely agree with. But then I will say, when I actually watched Raw and then SmackDown, you could see that this week, and again, we never know how long these things will last, this week they were making a concerted effort to listen to some of the complaints when it comes to the misuse of talent. And hence, I think, Tyler Breeze getting Intercontinental Champ, being the one to come out to that open challenge and getting this, spotlight match. Hence, I didn't actually see this. It was cut from the Hulu cut, but reading the results, I see the Revival winning, the chance for the tag team titles.
I did wonder if you saw that, yeah.
I didn't see it, but I read about it. And then But then I think that continued on SmackDown, where suddenly Sanity and Anderson and Gallows,
the
suddenly,
club, the Good Brothers, whatever you want to call them, yeah, and Sanity too, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so suddenly they were back in the mix. The fact that the main event involved Mustafa Ali and Andre Cien Almas, to me it seemed like a very concerted effort this week to be like, okay, we know that there's this big complaint that we do all these call-ups for NXT and we all have this great people and then we don't do anything with them. So suddenly there was several people who you can mention in that mix of, wow, they're not doing anything, who had things to do this week.
No, definitely, yeah. No, I see that, and they specifically people who, and I think too that speaks to a lot of that, and then Ali getting actually officially added to the SmackDown roster.
Yeah,
I think it speaks to the worry that we also have about these 6 NXT call-ups, because you and I have talked before about how we don't want any more call-ups until they do right by the ones who've already been called up.
Yes.
By doing everything they can to help them succeed, and then if they don't, then so be it. But, giving Revival a title run, doing something with Sanity, with Cien Almas, with, Ember Moon, she got to participate in that gauntlet match, but still something for her.
Yeah.
Bigger storylines with these characters. AOP maybe for the moment is going to get sort of forgotten about, maybe because they were actively part of one of the specific storylines that was sort of shitty, and that sucks when you kind of get wiped away. Baron Corbin too, by the way, is a victim of this. It's not to say that he always wasn't going to get a comeuppance at TLC, because that's the natural role of the storylines when you've got a huge villain.
Yes.
But the way it continued on Raw, with him getting beat down again and then getting beat up by Seth Rollins backstage, it's another one of those situations where, because he is not only part of a storyline people didn't like, but is being called out in storyline as the one to blame for everything.
Right.
Not only is he being stripped of his GM role, but is he also going to get subsequently storyline buried for a while?
Right.
Like, that's also, and which I guess it sort of sucks, because this Constable Corbin leading into acting GM Corbin role was the best thing that had happened for his career. Up to date. So I do like that Vince acknowledged too that as long as we give you more of what you want and less of what you don't want, we're gonna be good. Like, it'll continue to be WWE then, now, forever. Which is weird, because obviously they can't always give us everything that pleases us. So was this a way of him saying, like, there's going to be some misses, or a way of him acknowledging we are going to actively have to do things we know ahead of time you're not going to like, but we have to do them because we are invested in pushing this storyline or this superstar, or I don't know how to take it, but it was a full acknowledgement that we're just going to give you more of what you want, but not everything you want. So right. I thought that was interesting. He wasn't promising us the moon. He was saying we're going to do better, not but just a little bit better, maybe.
Yeah. But yeah, and just because it was funny, because Trish hadn't seen she went to TLC with me, but she didn't see Raw and SmackDown, and I was telling her all this, and then just that question of like, but is this just like the end of the year thing that they're doing, and then like in a month, once again, the Revival and Sanity and all these guys are off camera again,
I hope not. I mean,
I hope not either. Yeah.
The trouble is, though, is you can do right by these NXT call-ups for now, or like push them for a few weeks, or hopefully more, but you still got 6 superstars coming up and no one leaving.
Yeah,
it's still a capacity issue. It's still an overcrowdedness issue. It's still I mean, you have 3 hours on Raw, so hopefully you can get to as many people as you want, but what it's going to mean is more multi-person matches and more, that's the whole thing, is like with the women, is they were in so many tag matches or 3-on-3 matches because it's a way to get everyone in, but then ultimately those matches don't mean anything, but it's still giving people work. I don't know. It's a double-edged sword, because you don't want people to constantly be on TV doing things that don't matter, but then you also don't want them ignored.
Right.
So it's a tricky, it's a tricky tightrope to walk here. And yeah, I don't